Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today we are going over the case of Elisabeth Fritzl. This is the story of a woman who escaped her kidnapper, and when the police asked who did it, it turned out to be her own father. So this is Josef Fritzl, and in 1956, he married a woman by the name of Rosemarie. Josef was an engineer in Austria and was generally a well-respected member of his community. The young couple had a lot to look forward to and planned to build a family together in the future. Josef and Rosemarie got busy and ended up having 7 children. One of which was a girl that they named Elisabeth. As the years passed, the Fritzl household became a very strained place. Josef was known to be strict and sometimes even straight up abusive to his own children and even his wife. Elisabeth, however, found herself to be on the receiving end of Josef's worst atrocities. Starting at the age of only 11 years old, Elisabeth was constantly abused and assaulted by her father. Josef was also extremely strict and overprotective of specifically Elisabeth. This made it difficult for her to live a normal life and have friends like any other normal teenage girl would. As Elisabeth grew older, her relationship with her father just continued to worsen. Elisabeth's teenage years were a struggle, and she argued with her father every single day. When Elisabeth finally turned 18, she planned to run away and escape the grasp that her father had on her. Even though she didn't tell him, Josef was kind of suspecting that she was going to try to do this. So on August 28th of 1984, Josef asked for Elisabeth's help with something in the basement. Elisabeth walked downstairs and saw a door that Josef was asking for her to hold up for him. What Elisabeth didn't realize was she was holding up the exact same door that was going to keep her trapped for the next 24 years. When Josef finished installing the door, he drugged Elisabeth and placed her inside of a makeshift apartment. Josef had secretly been constructing a tiny structure with the intention of trapping and keeping Elisabeth down there. All of this was in the basement of their own home. The apartment was extremely small, and there was no way a human should have ever been living in those conditions. There was a small sink, a small toilet, an even smaller bedroom, and kind of a makeshift kitchen area for her. But even then, she should have never been there to begin with. Following the abduction of his own daughter, Josef even forced Elisabeth to write fake letters to her family. These letters created a fake story that Elisabeth actually ran away and did not have any intentions of coming back home. In these letters, Josef made Elisabeth tell her family to never come looking for her. As months passed and the searches for Elisabeth died down, eventually people began to move on with their lives, unaware that Elisabeth was actually living only a few feet away from them. No one, except Josef, knew the truth of where Elisabeth was. For the next 24 years, Josef visited Elisabeth regularly, sometimes even daily, to deliver her groceries, water, necessities, things that you need to keep a human alive. He gave Elisabeth a small radio, TV, and just random items to try and keep her occupied. During these years that Elisabeth was trapped, Josef even forced himself upon her and regularly assaulted her. It was so bad that it got to the point that Elisabeth was actually getting pregnant multiple times. In total, Elisabeth gave birth to 7 children, fathered by her dad. 3 of the children were left underground with Elisabeth to keep her company. The other 3 were taken up and raised by Josef and his wife themselves. And Josef came up with this system to have Elisabeth create more fake notes saying that she had this baby and didn't want it, so she was just going to leave it at the doorstep of her parents. And somehow he was able to trick the public into believing these were Elisabeth's children that she didn't want, that he was going to raise as his own. Elisabeth even went on to have a 7th child that unfortunately died shortly after birth. As Elisabeth was having more and more children, Josef recognized that he probably needed to give her a little bit more space to live in. So what he decided to do is he put Elisabeth and her infant children to work. He basically forced them to dig at the dirt underneath their house with their bare hands in an attempt to expand their living situation. This project was extremely painful and lasted for years. One day in 2008, Elisabeth's daughter Kirsten fell ill. And after Josef ignored her requests for medicine, she fell into a coma. Elisabeth begged for Kirsten's life, and eventually Josef agreed and took Kirsten to the hospital. When Kirsten arrived to the hospital, she was diagnosed with kidney failure and had to remain there for over a week. During her stay, a national search began based on the fact that this girl showed up, nobody knew who she was, nobody knew who her parents were, and there was no record of her ever existing. After the week passed, Elisabeth continued to beg Josef to see her daughter. For some reason, Josef actually agreed and took Elisabeth out from her imprisonment. He took her to the hospital where she could finally see her daughter. When they arrived, Elisabeth finally got the help of the police. Police then arrested and detained Josef, and Elisabeth told a story that nobody could believe. Over the course of 2 hours, Elisabeth told the story of her 24-year-long imprisonment at the hands of her own father. On March 16, 2009, Josef finally stood trial for the crimes against his daughter. After only 3 days of being on trial, Josef was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Now, he does have the possibility of parole after only 15 years, but he's pretty old, so I don't think he has much longer. As of today, Josef is still serving his prison sentence in Austria. Thank you guys for watching today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on the video if you found it interesting. I hope y'all have a good rest of y'all's day, and I will see y'all on the next one.